This video is brought to you by Grand Gamers Guild. I'm feeling awfully internety in this video. Now, I'm going to ask you all a question and I want you to think about your answer. How do you feel about wild conjecture based on no evidence whatsoever? If your answer was a resounding "I love it," then you're going to love the next 10 minutes. This is because I know nothing about the games I'm about to pontificate on. I only know that I'm going to part with my ever-dwindling resources of cash in the vain hope that owning these games will confer the slightest meaning to my life. It's not all just arbitrarily sticking a pin into a website listing the games though. No, I've leveraged my expertise on games and I've decided to use the "ooh, I recognise that name" method. Mostly. Also some nice colours on the box, and if I was really bamboozled, I did some research. Also, for this video I wanted to cover some different genres because this is Essen and it would be incredibly easy to pick all heavy Eurogames. But I, dear viewers, am a generalist, which means I know nothing about everything. So here are the categories. Of course, we start with Euro, then Light, 2-player, Solo and Abstract. And if I've missed anything out, please tell me how stupid I am down below. So all you need to do now is take an U-Bahn, buy one of those spiral potato things from the Galleria and join me in the heart of one of the most indistinct cities you will ever visit. Vladimir Suchy's work since I got into this hobby. I was wowed by the charm and humour of Last Will, and from that moment I've always kept an eye on what he's doing. He shot out of the blocks with the first game from his own imprint Delicious Games, with the wildly successful Underwater Cities, and has never looked back. Since then, he's published a raft of games of undeniable quality with Praga Caput Regni, Woodcraft and my favourite delicious title, Messina 1347. I'm truly jumping out of my pants for this year's release though. Evacuation deals with an idea that should be fantasy, but with every day that passes becomes more and more plausible. That is, that the planet is dying and we need to escape to our new home so we can get down to the business of ruining that place too. I love that this concept is simultaneously pessimistic and full of hubristic confidence. It posits a future in which we won't develop technology good enough to save the planet that we stand on, but we will be able to develop interstellar travel. This game isn't just a sobering concept though, it sounds mechanically fantastic. This is an engine dismantling then rebuilding game. You start on the dying planet with all the machinery of economics intact, then you have to dismantle that and carry it to the new planet and rebuild it there, taking only what you feel is necessary. This sounds like it's going to be a game of grand ambition and big ideas, but as it's Vladimir Suchy, it's going to be bloody well designed too. Bloody cats. Now I have no issue with actual cats, but the trend of slapping a bloody cat on the box in the hope that memeified internet hostages will buy it based on their TikTok playlists, well, it's a bit cynical. So it's fair to say I'm not going for this one based on its theming. This is based solely on one of the designers. I'll come back to that in a minute. This one is a roll and write. As with every trend that ends up subsuming this hobby for a while, a lot of people moan about it, and while I love being a contrarian more than most, well, I was never really bothered by roll and writes. It seems like the most innocuous of genres, with cartographers being the only one that really troubles the upper echelons of game design. It is a genre that fills some of the time in before death, and it does that wonderfully. So it isn't the roll and write nature of the game that attracts me. It's one name, William Attia. This is a name that tickles my nostalgia gland, which has a massive growth spurt in middle age. This is not because of his most famous game, Caelus, though. It is because of his follow-up, Spirium. I bought this one at my first Essen, and it's been in fairly regular rotation since. On the basis of this game alone, I will be excited by any game that bears William Attia's name. This is not just designed by William Attia though. He's teamed up with the designer of Revive, Christian Abedson Urzby. This is a roll and write set in a house in which you're putting your marks on different floors. Each floor has different rules attached to it, and there are 12 possible rules that come in the game, so there's variety right out of the box. I just want to give a brief disclaimer here. If it sometimes sounds like I'm spouting marketing copy, it's not because there is some clandestine conspiracy between me and the publisher. This over-exuberance is as much for me as it is for you. It is a way to try and convince myself that forking over the cash for these games is a good idea, so take what I say with the top half of the EU salt mountain. Anyway, to sum up, I like William Attia, so I'm going to get this game. I've never met a Paolo Mori design I didn't like. Also, he's made some of my most beloved titles. Libertalia, Ethnos and Dogs of War are all brilliant games. Using devilishly light rule sets, he always manages to produce riotous and satisfying games. You'll notice that I haven't mentioned Blitzkrieg yet. This is because, dear viewer, I'm going to use it as a clever segue to the game I'm actually talking about. He is especially skilled at two-player games, with Blitzkrieg being one of the most renowned titles, and because that game is so good, I'm intrigued by Match of the Century. This event echoed through my childhood. The Cold War played out across a chessboard. This was a front in which the Soviets were in the ascendancy until the enfant terrible of chess, yes, there was such a thing, came to cut them off at the knees. Fischer would go on to be a controversial... Oh, wait a minute. You know what I hate? I hate it when I'm watching a video about one thing and the host wants to demonstrate how bloody clever they are by giving some historical context. You've all got Wikipedia. You can read about Bobby Fischer on your own time. This game looks fascinating. You're not playing chess, but you are determining the outcome of a chess match. This is the spiritual sequel to Matthias Kramer's Watergate and promises to be a wonderful back and forth. Also, it's Paolo Mori, so it's going to be amazing. I can't wait for this one. I want to talk about this video's sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild. They publish wonderful games, but I want to talk about one of their most thoughtful and relevant ones, Endangered. In Endangered, you're environmental campaigners trying to save the habitats of endangered species and convince the UN to implement policies to ensure their ongoing survival. Endangered is a wonderfully designed and meticulously thought out cooperative game that deals with a very present danger. If you like a challenge, Endangered provides it, and if you want a game that deals with the real world in a sensitive and thoughtful way, well, it does that too. You can get Endangered by going to grandgamersguild.com, and I want to thank them for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to it. Freedom of Frieza is a fascinating character. Strip away the forced zaniness of the green hair and you'll find a supremely talented designer who loves riffing on the tropes of games. There isn't a designer who is more meta than Freedom of Frieza, with 504 and Copycat being prime examples. I'm not a super avid solo player, but Freaky Frogs from Outer Space is on the list because I am an avid fan of Freedom and Frieza's solo games. Friday and Finished are just great, and they offer a deep challenge while not lasting very long and not taking forever to set up and tear down. Freaky Frogs from Outer Space is a pinball simulator which sounds just amazing. The write-up on BGG is full of all of the marketing bullshit, but read between the lines and this looks to be a wonderful experience. It promises a true pinball experience with the absurd bonuses, multi-balls and the possibility of chance slapping you around the chops. I'm not the most cognition-y person on the planet, so I like the vicissitudes of chance to play a factor in my play. When a game becomes an arid puzzle to solve, I turn off because that is not my strength, and playing games shouldn't be work. This one seems like brilliant fun. Also, you can't deny the pedigree. If you were thinking about dipping your toes into solo games, this might be a good place to start. My first solo game was Friday and it's brilliant. The predilection for my brain to light up when I see a name I recognise is particularly on show here, in fact doubled. Also, for a game that describes itself as abstract strategy, the theme is pretty cool. The designers of this one are big names. Firstly, you have Michael Kiesling, the designer of Azul and a pillar of the board game design world. Then you have a designer that is so well regarded that the score track around a game board is named after him. Also, he invented area control with El Grande. Of course, I'm talking about Wolfgang Kramer. Together, they have designed a truckload of games, with Paris being one of my favourites a few years ago. This one just sounds cool. You store emotions in the brain and build routes to move those emotions and score points. There is route building here, like loads of games, but the way the game looks and the refusal to plaster it in the stark monochrome of many abstract games really appeals. This worked brilliantly with Azul, and I'm hoping that it will be the same here. Also, it's designed by two of the best game makers who've ever lived, so it has to be worth a look. Well, there we are, my picks for Essen. If you're there, be sure to say hello, and you could even buy me a pint if you really want to. Right now though, you can help grow this channel by liking and subbing and telling your friends and forcing people in the streets to get their phones out and click on the subscribe button, or you'll get really angry. Also, you can buy fabulous merch at sirmeeple.com and support the show financially like these lovely people by going to patreon.com/5G4D. I wouldn't be able to go to Essen and report on it without that support. Right, just before I go, I want to teach you how to ask for the toilet in German because you'll need that when you're there. Alright, repeat after me. Ich habe eine Giraffe und hat 15 Beine. Just say that to a German and they'll definitely tell you where to go.